Good evening and welcome to the City of Pasco Council meeting. The council thanks you for being part of our city government. At meetings, the city council takes formal actions on items, holds public hearings, and conducts other business of the city. Following Governor Inslee's recent statewide mask mandate, facial masks are required to be worn at all times while in the council chambers. If any individual is unable to comply with this order, then the meeting will be recessed until compliance is met. If compliance is not met and the individual refuses to leave the chambers, then the meeting will either recess and reconvene only virtually or be adjourned. Agenda packets are available on the City of Pasco's website at www.pasco-wa.gov/agenda. Please note that the City Council meetings may be accessed through GoToWebinar, and this meeting is also being televised live on Pasco TV channel 191, on Spectrum Cable in Pasco and Richland, and is streamed on the city's Facebook page, website, and YouTube channel. This and previous council meeting video is available on the city's website. And lastly, the public may submit their comments and or questions by contacting the city manager, city clerk, or by using the Ask Pasco app. And with housekeeping out of the way, can we have a roll call, please?
Council members Alvarado,
Present.
Maloney,
Present.
Milne,
If he's not here, we'll
move on.
Mayor, I did get word he was on his way.
oh, okay, thank you.
All right, we'll mark him in when he gets here. Councilmember Roach. Councilmember Roach.
Okay,
Count-
same.
Okay, Councilmember Serrano.
Present. My apologies for attending remotely. I had planned on being there in person. Somehow I missed it. We're starting at 6 this week.
Mayor Pro Tem Barajas. Present. And Mayor Martinez.
Thank you. Yes, present. So, most of us are here. We have a quorum, and we'll accept those who are coming in late just because we're starting at 6. But if you would please rise for the flag salute, for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next, we'll move on to consent agenda. All items listed under the consent agenda are to be considered to be routine by the City Council and will be enacted by a roll call vote as one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items. If further discussion is desired by the council members or the public, the item may be removed from the consent agenda to the regular agenda and considered separately. First item on the consent agenda is to approve the minutes of the Pasco City Council meeting held on October 18, 2021, and a special meeting and workshop held on October 25th, 2021. Next is to approve claims in the total amount of $5,211,215.38. And then to approve resolution number 4107, authorizing the city manager to execute a fifth change order to the construction contract with Apollo Inc. for the processed water reuse facility embankment repair project. And also to approve resolution number 4108, accepting work performed by Apollo Inc. under contract for project number 20100 PWRF embankment repair. Item D of the consent agenda is to approve resolution number 4109, setting 7:00 p.m. November 15, 2021 as the time and date for a public meeting to consider the Thanksgiving Partnership Notice of Intent to commence annexation of property located east of North Capitol Avenue, approximately 1,400 feet south of Foster Wells Road. Item E of the consent agenda is to approve resolution number 4110, authorizing the city manager to execute a sponsorship agreement with Spokane Teachers Credit Union for art wraps of utility boxes. And item F is to approve resolution number 4111, renaming Melita Lane to Philippi Lane and Lystrad Lane to Nauvoo Lane in Madison Park Planned Unit Development Phase 7. So with that, if there's any comments or questions from the council and or the public?
Mayor, this is Councilmember Roach, and I just wanted to say that it's 6:05 and I'm here.
Thank you, Councilmember Roach. We got that noted. And with that, again, I'll just make one more opportunity for anybody to have any questions on the consent agenda. If not, then Mayor Pro Tem.
I move to approve consent agenda as read.
I'll second.
So there's a motion to approve the consent agenda as read, and it's been seconded by Councilmember Alvarado. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Councilmember Maloney,
Yes.
Milne, Roach,
Yes.
Serrano,
Yes.
Alvarado,
Yes.
Barajas,
Yes.
and Martinez.
Yes.
Great.
I thank you. Passes unanimously. All right, next we go to proclamations and acknowledgements, none listed tonight. And then now we'll go to the visitor other than agenda items. So this item is provided to allow citizens the opportunity to bring items to the attention of the city council or to express an opinion on an issue. Its purpose is not to provide a venue for debate or for the posing of questions with the expectation of an immediate response. Some questions require consideration by council over time and after a deliberative process with input from a number of different sources. Some questions are best directed to staff members who have access to specific information. Citizens' comments will normally be limited to 3 minutes, each by the mayor, and those with lengthy messages are invited to summarize their comments and or submit written information for consideration by the council outside of formal meetings. So with that, I will go ahead and open it up to, I'll start with a gentleman by the name of Robert Carosino. Is he on the line tonight? Okay.
You should be available, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Mr. Carosino, are you on the line tonight?
Yes, I am.
Good evening. You have something you'd like to share tonight?
Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate the chance to talk to the council. I wanted to speak to them about candor and leadership in the development of the essentially new city that's going to be built in northwest Pasco along Broadmoor Boulevard and the areas to the west and to the north. On October 12th, the Tri-City Herald wrote a story talking about the new 100-plus store development that was going to be going into the Broadmoor area. And a week or so earlier, the Mayor Pro Tem of the city of Pasco confirmed that the Costco store was going to be going in on a 40-acre site next door to the 56-acre new shopping center. But the story had some inaccurate and misleading information about the traffic impacts of these projects, which I want to bring to the council's attention, because I think it's something the council needs to do, make sure their citizens and citizens of all of Northwest Franklin County are aware of the situation that is coming about. The story said that the Department of Transportation in January had sent a letter expressing concern about traffic impacts on the nearby I-182 interchange. And I will also say that they sent a similar letter to the city a couple of years ago with regard to the urban growth expansion project. But then the story went off base when it said that a number of the transportation needs were already being addressed, including a project to widen the I-182 interchange cross bridge and make improvements in an amount of almost $40 million. Hello?
Okay, yep, we're here.
Okay, I'm sorry, I saw a pause on that. That is really an inaccurate statement, and I don't know where they got that information. But surprisingly, that kind of statement was very similar to the response that the Pasco Planning Commission member gave to Congressperson Roach about a year ago when you were debating the expansion of the urban growth area, and I raised concerns about traffic there, and Congresswoman Roach asked about what are the expected traffic impacts and what are we going to do about it? And someone, I do not believe it was from the city bureaucracy, the management team, the paid employees, but someone who I believe reported themselves to be a member of the planning commission said that there are $200 million worth of traffic and transportation upgrades planned. And the only place I can find anything of that sort is in a study that was done for the urban growth expansion. And what it really was a wish list of all the kinds of improvements that would be necessary to make all the transportation upgrades that will be needed for the 40,000 plus people that may be joining us in Pasco. In no way is that a true planned activity. There's no funding, there's no design work ongoing. And when I read the story in the paper, I called the Pasco Public Works Department, and I want to applaud and thank them for being very candid and telling me no, that there is no such effort underway. They were very surprised by the $40 million statement. And I note that on your agenda for tonight, you're looking at a preliminary feasibility study for a Band-Aid type of activity that maybe will get done several years in the future.
Okay.
For improving the exit from the freeway coming east
So
by making a loop,
Mr.
and maybe
Carcino?
another lane going west. But these are tiny improvements. They're not a $40 million upgrade. They don't do anything to the roadway
Mr.
and bridge
Carcino.
across the freeway. And so the people in this area are going to be impacted significantly by the kind of traffic congestion that we're getting. And it's going to be people coming into these wonderful new stores that are going to be built here.
Mr.
I'm not
Carcino?
anti-development. I'm pro-development, but I want you to try and phase your work and approval of new commercial activities with the ability to fund and actually construct the traffic upgrades that will be necessary.
Okay.
I don't think that's going to entirely happen.
Mr. Carcino.
But I think you need to.
Excuse me.
You need to be.
Excuse me. I need you to summarize, and I think we get the gist
Okay.
of what you're trying
Okay.
to tell us. But
My 42 years of project development work for the federal government have taught me to always be candid with the public and don't mislead them. They'll forgive you for almost anything as long as you don't mislead them. Second,
Okay.
there are going to be very significant traffic impacts in this area. And you need to be doing something now to try to provide alternatives for the 20 to 40,000 new people who are going to be moving in very
Okay.
soon. So this development is happening right now to provide access to the river, walking and biking paths along the river. Fortunately, you've got
Mr. Carcino.
engineer's property you can access, and buy some land for a major city park. You don't need a study.
Okay,
of
Mr.
parking
Carcino,
throughout the
excuse
city.
me.
So I just want to ask you. to
Excuse
do
me.
that, and just
That's
anyone who
your time is up,
can do
Mr.
that as
Carcino.
policymakers for the city of Pasco. So I'll close with that.
Thank you. All right. So next we'll, so there's information we can have a discussion on that.
Yeah, absolutely. If he could, Mr. Carcino, this is Dave Zabel, the city manager, and you should be able to find my email pretty easily on the website. If you want to just send me a quick email with some contact information, I can get a hold of you and give you a rundown of how development works and principles of concurrency and what's in the making right now with some of the improvements being planned out there.
Thank you. All right, next we'll move on to anybody else that has an item that's not on the consent agenda. Good evening, Mr. Morales.
How's it going? Thank you for the opportunity. Most of the stuff I'm gonna talk are gonna be addressed by the essential C2 and the sprinklers. I really appreciate the council. But I got a question though. I want one of you guys, I mean, I understand that you cannot answer any question, but if you guys can comment on my comment, I would really appreciate it. Can the city council have some clarification or what are we doing here with COVID or not COVID? I mean, the city council has been working from their house for a year and a half. Most of them are not here today. And back in November last year, I was allowed to open the back to help me with COVID. And then in May, the city employees came out and said, oh no, you cannot do it anymore. So my question is we still on COVID or we're not in COVID, can you guys come up with an idea saying like, we are in COVID or we're not in COVID, the city council staying home because we are in COVID stuff? Can you get some clarification? Like, one that I want to know that you did. Back in last year, you put it in saying you can have a seating outside. Why did you guys took that one if we were still in COVID? Why am I not allowed to put my seat outside? Why? How come the state is mandated right now vaccine for police and for this and that? Why the double standard? Why when you guys want to stay home, you can say, okay, we gotta follow COVID protocols, and we're gonna all stay home and social media and stuff like that. But why when I want to open my business a little open wide so I can survive while COVID, you say, oh, you're not in COVID anymore. That was only between January and May 5th. We decided that what you were allowed to do back in November last year is not allowed anymore. Can you guys do some clarification of what is on COVID and what is not in COVID? Why are you guys are not here? Why I'm not allowed to do the stuff that you guys allowed me to do last year? What did change? I mean, because the state's mandating vaccines and blah, blah, blah. You guys, most of the council is not here. So can I get a clarification? What can we do to survive this COVID-10? And can I get a clarification? What is COVID? The double standard. What is COVID for the council and what is COVID for the public or for the business? Can I get something? I would be really appreciative if you guys communicate what I'm allowed to do while we're still in COVID, or COVID is over and I'm not allowed to do the outside seating. I know C2 is going to change of that, but I know I know it's going to take a few months. I want to know what can I do and what can I do as a business to help myself in the next few months while you guys change C2 and the sprinklers, which I really appreciate it. I really appreciate the help, but I want to know what is it that I can do and what is it that I cannot do to survive. The only thing I want to do is survive these few months are coming in, and I want to know what I'm allowed to do and what I'm not allowed to do, and why I was allowed to do it back in November last year, and why I'm not allowed to do it in November this year. What has changed? That's all I want to know. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Good evening.
Good evening, council members. Thank you, Mayor Martinez and Blanche Barajas, for your constant support for Grace Kitchen. I just wanted the opportunity again to come before you and share who we are, what we do, and the impact that we're trying to make in the city of Pasco right here in downtown. So Grace Kitchen is a job training, employment, mentoring program for some of the most marginalized women in our community. We provide jobs to women who have been trafficked, women overcoming addiction, women coming out of prison, and homelessness. We would love to be able to launch our barista job training program. We are seeing so many new women coming in our doors every week who need jobs, and we would love to be able to provide that for them. There's been some misunderstanding with code enforcement in regards of, as Leo just said, what we can do and what we cannot do. Do we need a fire suppression system or do we not? Do we just need a drawing, or now do we need a fire suppression system? So it's really hard to get a straight answer. So I also want to thank the council members that have responded to my emails, and I look forward to all the other ones responding as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Could you please state your name?
Yes, my name is Amanda Lorraine. I'm the founder and executive director of Grace Kitchen, 112 North 2nd Avenue.
Anyone else?
Good evening, council members. My name is Devin Lorraine. I'm co-founder of Grace Kitchen. I just wanted to share with you quickly some of the impact that we're having with some of the women who are coming in our doors. We're seeing real life transformation where they have been Sorry, they've been, very broken. They've been abused. They've made some bad choices, but they've also been taken advantage of. And their identities are just so broken. And we provide a safe place for them to come where they can experience love and they can experience friendship. And we're seeing just a tremendous impact in these women's lives. They are being changed. They all have reconciled their bank accounts. They are looking at going back to college. Some of these women have been in jail 60 times, right? But they are absolutely having their lives changed by Grace Kitchen. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. And we love Pasco. We want to bless the city. And so that's just what I wanted to share with you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Anyone else?
Dave Cortines, president of the Latin Business Association. I just came back from Seattle attending the huge meeting that they had in the announcement of Seattle being chosen as the FIFA CONCACAF World Cup to be brought to Seattle in 2026. They're going to be requesting letters from communities and cities throughout the Northwest supporting this decision. We've got the FIFA people in town and visiting Seattle and looking to bring this World Cup, which will be a huge opportunity for the Northwest to entertain a World Cup in the Northwest, and being asked to work with the Latino media, in which we'll be working with bringing hundreds and thousands of media to the Northwest, and I'm honored that to be able to work with that and do that on behalf of this huge announcement in Seattle today, and then tonight the ball game being LA, and the Sounders are playing, in which I couldn't stay because I had other commitments, and so I had to fly back. But I just want to ask that that we do that when we are requested, that we have the opportunity to send a letter to the committee and say that we are in support. I know all the state universities and everyone else is in the process of supporting and helping this international committee to choose Seattle for the World Cup. It was a great opportunity to be part of the press conference today, and then just to fly back and think about what part we could take. They're going to be looking for training fields months before the Cup. They'll be looking for areas to bring players to even a year before to come and practice in different parts of the city. So I think it would be a great opportunity for us to take part of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Sounds exciting. Thank you very much. Last call. Okay, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. We have reports and from committees and or officers. Anybody from the council have anything they'd like to report? I would just say that it was a very successful ribbon cutting ceremony from STCU last week. They've been open for a while, but due to all the pandemic issues, they waited till now, and wanted to thank G2 Construction and all the people involved, excuse me, from STCU. Made a wonderful ribbon cutting ceremony. It was quite a celebration and a long awaited for. And the facility, not only the facility is in great shape, but the artwork that was provided. And again, STCU, as you know, will be part of the agenda tonight. And it was a successful ribbon cutting ceremony. So I appreciated that activity. And that's all I have. Anybody else?
Mayor, this is Councilmember Roach, and I just have a quick update about Visit Tri-Cities. The annual meeting is coming up next week, and forgive me, I don't know, I think it is November 4th. But in the meantime, we met last Wednesday, finalized the mission, vision, statements with the facilitators. And there's actually going to be new board members, new officers of the board. One of our Pasco residents and downtown business owners, Jose Miguez, will be on the new, as one of the new office members.
Perfect. Thank you for that report, Councilwoman Roach. All right, if there's nobody else, then I will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the General Fund Monthly Report for August and September of 2001. Director Rita, would you like to kick us off with that?
Evening, Mayor and Council. I apologize for a delay on this report, so you will see 2 months instead of one that you're used to for August and September. And as we're getting into the end of 2021, you'll see some adjustments to the revenues that we're also going to talk about in our later general fund revenue hearing as well. And some of these revenues are more in-depth analysis of the trends that we're seeing, mostly around utility taxes and sales taxes, things that we now have enough data to kind of create a trend on. And if council remembers, when we were setting the budget last year, we were not quite sure how 2021 is going to go, or was going to go. And to a certain extent, we still are looking into the supply chain issues and how that will impact some of the revenue sources for our construction company, as well as retail, especially auto. But overall, this is our best educated projections at this time for our revenue.
Thank you, Director Richa. Any questions or comments for Director Richa on this budget? All right, well, thank you for that. And I'm sure we're going to hear more here a little bit later. Next, we're going to go to hearings and council actions on ordinances and resolutions relating thereto. And we do have one tonight. We have an ordinance amending the chapter 25.90 of the Pasco Municipal Code. And before we get started, Mr. Briggs, would you like to give a little?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that. So the purpose of tonight's open record hearing, first open record hearing is just the point at which the City Council as a single legislative body is going to make a decision specifically tonight on the C2 zone contained in Pasco Municipal Code 2590 related to changes in certain permitted prohibited uses within the C2 zone. A part of that open record hearing, what that means is that the information, evidence, testimony that's used to reach the decision is established during the hearing. So that'll be tonight's hearing, as opposed to a closed record hearing where that information would be determined prior to the hearing, and that determination would be based solely on that information. No testimony, evidence, information would be permitted at the hearing. So a part of that is the citizens' right to, during the public hearing, as opposed to a public meeting, to make comment. Obviously, we have to limit the fashion and the duration of that comment. I think typically the city's comment period is limited to about 3 to 5 minutes from practice, prior practice. So that's the point at which during the hearing the public is welcome to comment on that. The purpose of the comment isn't for a back and forth debate between the citizen and council. The purpose is to, again, inform council, provide some of that evidence from the citizen's perspective that would aid them in reaching an appropriate decision.
Well, thank you, Mr. Briggs. And with that said, Mr. White, would you like to provide us with a brief report before we open the meeting?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. As Mr. Briggs noted, this is an open record hearing by council on a code amendment to the C2 zoning district. It reflects the addition of several land uses that were previously prohibited. We're bypassing the planning commission involvement in this in the interest of expediency so that this can get judged by council, and then once approved, of course, we can get the effective date of the ordinance out sooner, which we expect, assuming adoption tonight, would be roughly November 9th. There were two, and I'm going to apologize in advance. The wrong version of the ordinance was distributed to council at roughly 2:30 today. I'm not sure how that happened, but nonetheless, I take full responsibility. You received the corrected version, option B, in your packets, roughly dated 5:30, just this evening. With that, I would recommend the council conduct the open record hearing and adopt option B, which reflects Councilmember Maloney's comments based on several emails and discussions from up to present day till 2 weeks ago.
Thank you, Director White. And so, council, do you have any questions or comments from staff before I open the public hearing? Okay, if not, we'll open up this.
Hey, sorry, Mayor. This is
Oh,
Councilman Serrano.
Go ahead, Councilmember Serrano.
I guess not only was I late to 6 o'clock, but I was late to getting my mic on there. One thing I am curious about that we've heard a lot about is the secondhand dealers component, which I see remains prohibited, if I'm reading that correctly, on 25.90.050 in the B version, but it's removed as a prohibition from the A version. Can we speak to that specific issue, or Mr. White or someone from staff kind of speak to why B makes sense, if that's one thing that we're commonly hearing as something that's necessary for the downtown or desired of downtown businesses?
Well, I'll do my best. So again, option A is based on the ordinance and the revisions that were proposed by council as best I understood them roughly a month ago, October 4th or so. Option B are Council Member Maloney's comments, and they were in Mr. Maloney's version stricken as a permitted use.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Councilmember Maloney. I can address that, Mr. Serrano.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, so there's a number of I think in C2 zoning there's like 6 different types of used goods in some form or fashion that were either prohibited or allowed in various states in the original. This was kind of a catch-all. This plus pawn shops were kind of a catch-all that were remaining prohibited because I didn't know exactly what they even meant. And I know that sounds like a real cop-out, but this is consistent with what I provided as the comments back on October 4th. And so a number of used items or other goods have been added back into permitting. For example, if you look at the electronic sales and repair stores, the portion where it says with at least 50% of the stock and floor space devoted to the sale of new equipment, that last portion has been struck. When you look at clothing, shoes, accessories, and costume rentals, it had previously indicated new and unused materials only. That's been struck as well. And so basically, there are things that I guess I'm not aware of why we even have that section. And under the abundance of caution of what would be considered a minor change, I took the approach of trying not to change things I didn't understand and focusing on areas where we had heard direct feedback and had a very clear item where we could make a change. For example, again, clothing, electronics, etc. So that was the approach I took. So if someone wants to take exception to that, I'm not hard up on this. I just wanted to be clear that I was trying to implement exactly what we've marked up on the 4th. Thank you.
I appreciate that. I think my question then to either Mr. Briggs or Mr. White would be, by allowing those uses or striking those comments in the present version of 25090.050, 2590.02 by striking the new and unused comments, or with at least 50%, etc. Does that allow these secondhand dealers, because we're not expressly allowing that use, we're just simply eliminating the elimination of that use, if that makes sense. And my concern would be, we've only gotten halfway there.
I want to make sure I understand the question correctly, but I think what the council member is asking is whether or not it's the option B as currently drafted is sufficient to allow the stricken prohibited uses within the C2 zone to commence or to continue without express permission under 2590.020. Is that correct?
Yeah. More specifically, we struck line 28, secondhand dealers. We also struck language that disallowed certain types of secondhand dealers, if you will, electronics and clothing. But I want to ensure that, in particular, let's say in electronics or clothing sells used clothing or electronics, we're not expressly allowing that. We're just taking away the prohibition of selling those used materials. Correct. So I'm concerned that we've said, okay, at least it's not unallowable, but we're not saying it is allowable. Does that make sense?
It does. And when I'm looking specifically at just to make sure that we have consistency. That's obviously important. We don't want one section saying something and the other section saying something completely at odds with that. But I'm construing the current draft of 2590.020, specifically subpart 15, to obviously expand, the level or percentage of used materials that electronic sales or repair store would now be able to have on its floor, right? So there's no limit there with regard to, having to have a 50%, floor inventory of used materials, right? The prior was, that was the condition for it to be a permitted use. So now, theoretically, it would be a permitted use if, say, 1% of that floor space was used material, right? Or in this scenario, there's no condition at all. It could be an electronic sales and repair store selling new material. It could be an electronic sales and repair store selling nothing but old material that's been refurbished. Does that help?
Yeah, it does. I guess, I want to make sure that we've covered everything appropriately. So I think we're good with that. And I guess ultimately let's decide on what we're going to enact and go from there. And if we see that, this tends to be a hang up down the road, we'll have another minor revision, real minor revision, maybe for one line. But I just, like I said, I want to make sure that we're covering all these issues that have cropped up over the past few months, years, what have you. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Maloney. Serrano. So if there's no further questions by the council, then I'm going to go ahead and open up this hearing for any comments, and I'll call upon the first person who would want to comment on this. If you would, for the record, just state your name and address for...
Dave Cortines, 411 West Clark, Latin Business Association office. As one of the leads in this change, I think we have expressed the seriousness of this change and why we come to a council meeting and all of a sudden in the public hearing we have some changes. Now, I think if our downtown core unity that we have formed came here tonight and said, we'd like to make some more changes to this amendment, all of you would be throwing your hands up in the air. So now we have A, now we have B. How is a code enforcer going to go out and decide this is used product, this is new product? That code enforcement has no clue what's new and what's used. So we adopt this amendment. We have Goodwill, who's been grandfathered clause over here, that sells all usable stuff. And this amendment's going to eliminate, now they're going to have 50% new stuff on the floor, or 50%, no. Okay, that was already grandfathered clause in. So is that fair to anybody else, and now comes into the amendment and say, only you can have 50% new product and 50% used product? So, I mean, it's going to be hell. And again, we're going to be back making amendments to this C2 zone. It's just kind of weird that we would allow at 2:30 this afternoon, all of a sudden our administration wants to, decide I'm going to take responsibility, and it was my fault that I didn't get this out sooner to everybody and everybody involved. So, I mean, we're grateful and thankful that we've gone this far, and that city council members chose to accept and work with the downtown core of unity that we have formed to move forward and to be able that we can get to this point. But I just can't believe that we come here and we're excited that we're going to be able to move forward and give the good news to these business owners downtown and others that want to invest into downtown. There's people that want to invest in downtown, but they can't because of where we are with the C2. And so I'm all for, and along with our group, that we make change and we accept change. And I'm just a little flabbergasted that we come here at a public hearing and at the last minute have a plan A and a plan B. I think they're both good. I think they both will work. But I just see it just a little unnecessary that we have to go through this when we were expected to come here and had a plan and excitement to move forward and give the news to some of these business owners that have been struggling not only through the pandemic, but also have been suffering even before that because of the C2 zone was hurting their businesses. So I think that we can move forward on a decision tonight. And I'm excited that we're going to move forward on the decision tonight. I'm just a little concerned of how it's going to be enforced and the problems are going to, the communication between some of the non-Hispanic, non-English speaking business owners, all the explanation, all the things we're going to have to give to a lot of these business owners. So I appreciate the good work that's come into this play and the opportunity to be part of it. But I think that we need to be very careful on how we're going to move forward with this. I'm really concerned for the code enforcement on how it's going to really raise a lot of problems in deciding what is used. Either it's used product or it's non-used product. If it's new product or not used product. I just think it just needs to be clean cut so there's no problems down the road and we don't have to come back here and doing more amendments. One last thing I want to say, I know I've took up plenty of my time here. We have these halls downtown that are, a lot of them don't have sprinklers. One has sprinkler systems. She spent over $200,000 worth of sprinkler systems. All the other ones don't have sprinkler systems. And we've had this money sitting in the pot and the administration just can't seem to release the money to help Leo open up his business, to help Grace Kitchen, who with a great program that they have to sit back in their office with tears because they're not getting help. It's really sad that we've had all this pot of money and we can't seem to come up with a legal term or legal word to be able to help these business owners. Now in C2, I don't know if any of you city council members know this, but in C2, none of those halls downtown can have a public dance and charge $20 at the door. They have to take out a special event permit, a $75 special event permit, to hold a comedian show, to hold a public dance. They weren't told this until just a few months ago that they could do this. But all along, they've all been operating under the same rule and law and policy and ordinance because the city of Pasco told them, you can't do those things. They didn't even tell them they could take out a special event permit. Now all of a sudden, the can of worms have been opened. Oh no, you guys could have always been able to have a community dance or a comedian show and take out a special event permit and we'll charge you $75. Why are we charging $75 off of the property owners? They own these buildings. I can understand if we want to take out a special event permit to rent a park or use the park or close down the streets or any public facility owned by the city of Pasco. That's of course, we need to do that. But to charge $75 on the backs of these business owners who own these buildings, it just doesn't make sense to me.
But that's part of another issue, right?
Yeah, no, but it is part of the C2 because C2, a lot of these buildings downtown, Leo's downtown, and he hasn't gotten his sprinkler system money, and he's been promised many promises. I think we need to look at this at whole as a C2. That's when C2 was brought in, and no other part of the city is a C2 that I've seen. Most of it's C3, C4, and so on. So I just think that we need to come together and work together and make this happen, that we get rid of also this special event permit off the backs of these building owners. Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
So if I may interject, I am now either thoroughly confused or I think Mr. Cortinas misunderstood the conversation that preceded. What I understand from option B is there is zero distinction between the amount of floor space dedicated to new and used materials for item subsection 10, which is on electronic page, I can't get it to pull up, 12 of 16, and the electronic sales repair, which is now sub 14 on that same page. Am I correct?
Mr. Councilmember Serrano, you are correct. Option B takes out the provisions that Mr. Cortinas is complaining about.
Okay, that's fine. I'm not trying to call Mr. Cortinas out. We had a conversation, thought I understood, then thought I was wrong. Now I just need to know where I am and what I'm voting on. So, understood. The elimination of the distinction between used and new goods in subsection B or item B, whatever we're going to call it. Thank you very much, Mr. White.
Thank you. Does anybody else would like to speak on this item? Yes, sir. If you could state your name and address and for the record, please.
Jose Iniguez, business owner at 102 South 3rd Avenue, downtown Pasco. Well, first, I just wanted to thank the Councilwoman Roach's words in regards to being on the board for the Visit Tri-Cities. And I just first want to thank everybody who has referenced and lobbied on my behalf for that. So with that, I hope to bring new productions to this area with that. But as far as the C2, I just wanted to just give a recommendation on option B. And again, I want to thank the council, the city staff for the time and efforts in putting this together so quickly. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good evening. Thomas Granbois, Big Maple Properties, 108 North 4th Avenue in Pasco. I wanted to take my time and take this time to thank both council members and city staff for reviewing the C2 zoning. It's been a fast process, and we appreciate it. It's a big win, and I want to support option B. Councilmember Maloney has really grabbed this issue and made it his, and put an incredible amount of work into it. So I want to thank council as well as Councilmember Maloney specifically. And we're all really excited about this. It's a showing of goodwill, showing that that the city wants to move forward and make the downtown more interesting, more vibrant. And this is a piece of the puzzle that's going to go in along with the master plan, which of course more revisions may come along, but this is something, it's a step forward. And we're also excited about the life safety program that's been mentioned, and there's been a lot of work and conversation about that, because that's going to allow a lot of us that have older buildings that want to bring in new dynamic businesses to do that. That's part of the challenge that we've heard over and over again, that, you know, we have these old buildings, we want to maintain them, and C2 allows us to use them, but then we have other pieces that have to come together before they can be 100% utilized. So on behalf of myself and my wife, I want to thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gamboa. Does anyone else want to speak to this item? This is the second call. And third call.
Thank you, council members. I'm just excited for this moving forward, and looking forward again, like I said, offering more jobs to women in our program, catering, commissary kitchen, and all of those things. It's going to be really, really wonderful for the women at Grace Kitchen.
All right, thank you. So that was the third call, and so with that, I'm going to close the public hearing and ask for a motion from council, unless there's any other discussion that anybody would like to have. And I would ask, if you don't mind, Mayor Pro Tem, Mr. Maloney, would you like to make the motion on this one?
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate that gesture for sure. I would like to make that motion. I move to approve ordinance number 4556, option B, amending chapter 25.90 C2 Central Business District of the Pasco Municipal Code, and further authorize publication by summary only.
I second.
So there's been a motion to approve ordinance number 4556, option B, amending chapter 25.90 C2 Central Business District of Pasco Municipal Code, and further authorize publication by summary only. And it was seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Barajas. And with that,
this is Councilman Serrano. I really apologize for the late comment here. Is there any concern with health and safety regulations associated with massage parlors in this area? That's my only, I know that's very late breaking, just rereading, and, you know, I was fixated on the other issue. As long as we're good there, I'm just a little concerned about that.
Well,
So, Councilmember Serrano, this is Councilmember Maloney, and I'm sure staff can talk more about the legal implications. But what I did in moving that is, it's certainly not massage parlors that we're allowing. That has certainly a negative connotation, but rather to match up with the RCWs, which is a massage business, is how our state code refers to massage therapy locations. So the language in front of us in option B matches the state language used around that. And of course, the state has entire section of the code dedicated to how they regulate massage therapists. I would certainly encourage, if there's any illegal activity that might be suspected in any business downtown, that we would our police department would certainly enforce that.
No, I'm not suggesting this is Robert Kraft, frequent place, allegedly. But my only concern was, we've expanded things, but this seems to have more of like that. I guess I was concerned with in the event there's any type of health and safety regulation that might be associated with that's not associated with anything else that we see on here, aside from maybe even tattoo shops. I'm not objecting to it. I just want to make sure that we don't think this one needs a little bit more, or even possibly the tattoo component needs a little bit more analysis to make sure we're in the clear. But as you say, I get what you're saying. The RCWs point us there. I think as long as we're very clear about what we're limiting this to, I think we're probably covered.
Mr. White?
Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I also just want to reiterate for council that, remember, we are still going through a very detailed master plan effort. They're deep into it, and it will take some time, but if there are changes or needed revisions, I'm sure that'll be flushed out in the coming months.
Great, thank you, Mr. White.
Okay. All right. I apologize. Didn't mean to derail conversation and the vote. I'm sorry about that. Again, I know it's a little late breaking, but just want to make sure we're in the clear with what's what.
Thank you, Councilmember Serrano. So there was already motion and it was seconded. So why don't we have can we have a roll call vote on that, please?
Thank you. So for a roll call vote, I'd like to first start off with Councilmember Serrano,
Yes.
Alvarado,
Yes.
Maloney,
Yes.
Milne,
Yes.
Roach,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barajas,
Yes.
and Mayor Martinez.
Yes, so it passes unanimously. And I would just like to say, thank you to everybody involved. I know it's been a very difficult and hard process, but, coming together, doing what we did, we just move forward. Let's do the best we can to work together, as Mr. Cortinas indicated. And I would also like to thank Councilmember Maloney for being the champion on this issue with the downtown folks. I think all of us had a very, very keen interest in making sure and trying to do whatever it is we have to do to make it right downtown Pasco. So thank you again, Councilmember Maloney, and appreciate all the work that went into this with staff. So thank you very much. So next, we're gonna go to the public meeting, SERP requirement for PWRF pretreatment improvements, phase 1, potable water and electrical improvements. Mr. Worley, would you like to kick us off with that?
Yes, I would, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Council. Thank you very much. Most of you have seen this project come before Council before. As mentioned, it's the PWF pretreatment improvements phase 1, which includes improvements to the electrical system and extending a potable water line up to the reuse facility. You may remember it because we recently came to Council to award a design contract to RH2 to do the engineering for this. We also have come to Council with some low-interest loan documents from the Public Works Board on some loan money that has been received for this project. With that loan money comes this requirement for the state environmental review process, because this project, with the funding that it was received, is actually federal funds coming through a state agency. And so it's a little bit different process than what we may have brought to Council before. With that, as part of the environmental process, there is a section of that process called environmental justice. And environmental justice is a process where we target and engage portions of the population that don't typically get involved in these types of projects. So the intent of tonight's meeting is to encourage more involvement by communities that don't typically get involved. So staff has gone through the process of putting advertisements in the newspapers and on radios and Spanish-speaking news on the city's website, with the idea of encouraging those populations to come tonight and express to us their interest or their questions about the project. And we're here to answer any questions that people might have about the potential impacts to either the environment or to their areas or anything like that. So that's the goal for tonight. We're here to answer questions. We want to open the meeting up basically for any public comment that people might have related to this particular project. And I will end by saying that we may have to come back and do this again for the Phase 2 project, because that also is being funded by some of these same funds. And with that, Maria Serra, our CIP manager, has some additional comments.
Good evening,
Yes.
Ms. Sarah.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I just wanted to clarify, this project has funding from 2 state agencies. One is Ecology and the other one is Public Works Board, just to make it clear.
Great.
That's it. Thank you.
So this is not a open record hearing. This is a meeting for the public.
That is correct. This is not a formal, open public hearing or anything like that. This is just an open public meeting for an opportunity for people to come and comment and ask questions about this particular project.
Okay, does the council have any questions or comments for staff before I open it up to the public? If not, then
Mayor Martinez, I have a quick question for staff.
Go ahead, Councilmember Maloney.
Yeah, Director Worley, just wanted to make sure I understand. So this is a requirement for the federal perspective. Did we get any comments offline in response to any of the advertisements or any of the notifications and such out to the public?
We are not aware of any comments that have come through any other media or response avenue at this point. So we were hoping that folks here tonight were so interested in the reuse facility that they're here to provide us some comments and ask us some questions.
Thank you.
Is that all, Councilmember Maloney?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So with that, I'm gonna go ahead and open it up to anyone who would like to speak on this topic. Okay. Yes, sir. We got one back here. Good evening. And if you could state your name and address, that'd be great for the record.
Tom Kidwell, 4320 Riverhead, Pasco. I guess for him, only comment that I've understood is the place has an odor. I hope this will do away with the odor of it. I have understood that in the past. It's been pretty bad.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Kidwell. Yeah, the last thing we need is for somebody to come with another jar.
Yes, and I can address that, and I want to say thank you to Mr. Kidwell for actually being someone who came up and actually spoke. That's wonderful. But, and I would like to address that by saying that this project, because it's sort of phase 1 of multiple phases to improve the pretreatment process at this facility, while this project in and of itself won't address the odor issue, we can't fully address the odor issue unless we do this type of project so we can get the electrical power and the water there in order to address it with future projects.
Thank you, Mr. Wardy. Okay, so I have a second call for anyone else? And the third call. All right, so we'll close the opportunity for a public hearing. And with that, Mayor Pro Tem, or I guess I should ask if there's no other questions or comments by council. Okay,
Thank you, Mayor. I move to commence a public meeting for the Processed Water Reuse Facility, PWRF Improvements Project, Phase 1, Potable Water and Electrical Improvements Project.
so there's a motion to commence a public meeting for the processed water reuse facility. Do I hear a second?
Councilman Melny, I'll second that.
Yep, seconded by Councilmember Milne. So all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Passes unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Worley. All right, next we'll go to ordinances and resolutions not relating to hearing. And tonight, we have an amendment to, amendment number 1 to DKS Professional Services Agreement for the Design Phase 2A of I-82 Broadmoor Boulevard Interchange Project. Mr. Worley.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. Again, this is another one of those projects that council has seen before for very similar reasons. Staff has brought this item to council for the award of the project to DKS and Associates. And tonight, we are taking the next step on moving this project forward. Council may recall that the first time we came, we awarded the planning phase of the project, which is a lot of work and study that gets done in order to get approval from WashDOT and FHWA for improvements to an existing interstate interchange. This next step is what we're calling Phase 2A, which starts the design process. And in this particular effort, we will be looking at survey work, geotechnical work, and drainage work only. Because part of the planning process is to determine what the actual improvements are going to be. But information will be needed regardless of which option is chosen. And so we would like to move forward with it so we can get a head start on it and not wait until the planning process is done. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. I will say again that we will be coming back again for the next phase, which will be Phase 2B, when we start moving to the next phase of the design process.
Thank you, Mr. Worley. And I personally am excited about seeing this come to fruition, and I know these are the early stages, but and seeing the diagram of what the proposed, for the proposed study, I think it's imperative that has to happen in that area. So with that, is there any other questions or comments for staff from the council?
Just a quick question.
Yes, Councilmember Alvarado?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Worley. Also looking forward to some much needed improvements, especially as we are planning a big growth. I guess what I'm hearing is that this would allow us to do some preliminary work that would set us in a place to not have to do this again, regardless of which option we go. Is there any way that this becomes a bigger scope that we'd have to go do this again, or is this a seems like it could carry a big range of projects from here?
This project could be much larger depending on what the outcome of the access revision report suggests. Part of the process that we have to go through is to look at all the different options available, and we have to address many different aspects of it, including the traffic volumes and levels of service at either the off-ramps and the intersections at what we call the ramp terminals. And so we will be taking a look at that. We have to get a couple of committees involved. One's called the Executive Committee, which is people high up in WashDOT, high up in FHWA, high up in other agencies like ours and others, partner agencies. And then we also have a technical advisory committee that helps on the design side of everything. And so that's a big process that we have to go through, and we go through it open-mindedly, meaning we don't have a solution in mind. We have to let the solution come out of the process. And so depending on what that solution is, could mean that this project gets done in phases. So we may address an immediate need today, but there may be other recommendations that come out of the ARR process that we continue to pursue further in the future.
I think that helps.
Thank you, Councilmember Alvarado. So if there's, Councilmember Melly.
Yeah, more or less a statement that I'm really excited about seeing this. I actually use the I-82, Road 100 interchange almost every day, and so my always big concern is coming off I-82 and heading south on Road 100 where I live, is that little road there is extremely dangerous, and a couple times I almost got knocked off, just accidents, because it just seems like you don't have enough time, and if the person slams on their brakes in front of you, then it is a dangerous intersection. So just thank goodness you guys are working on this, and I'm very happy, and I look forward to it being changed around where it's a little more safer to pedestrians or us civilians that are on motorcycles, because it's quite scary when somebody locks it up and your bike can't stop as fast as a car can at times. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Melny. All right, with that, I would open it up to any members of the audience that would like to comment on this particular issue, on where we're at on this process. Nope. So if not, then we'll go ahead and entertain a motion.
Absolutely, Mayor. I move to approve resolution number 4112, authorizing the city manager to execute amendment number 1 to the professional services agreement with DKS Associates Incorporated for Phase 2A of the I-82 Broadmoor Boulevard Interchange project.
So there's a motion to approve resolution number 4112. Do I hear a second?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Pardon me, I apologize for the interruption. I did notice there's actually an error there, and it is I-182 Broadmoor. So if we could correct the motion to be I-182 instead of I-82, and that's my fault, I apologize.
Okay.
So,
Do you want me to read the whole thing again?
I don't know what the legal approach is.
Yeah, I think that would be appropriate to just make that. I think it would be appropriate to make that oral motion as amended, suggested by Public Works Director, Mr. Worley.
I move to approve resolution number 4112 as amended by Mr. Steve Worley, changing the I-82 to I-182 Broadmoor Boulevard Interchange project.
all right, so there's a motion on the floor to approve resolution number 4112 as amended by Director Worley, and it was seconded by Councilmember Alvarado. And we all understand that there was amendment to change from I-82 to I-182. So with that, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. It passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, next we'll move to item B of this section, which is a Design Build Institute of America Phase 1 agreement with T. Bailey, Inc., Water Storage Reservoir Zone 3, Progressive Design Build. And again, you want to give us an update on that, Director Worley?
Yes, Mr. Mayor and council members. As you may recall, staff has come before you previously with a project that is to construct a water reservoir in to help support Zone 3 of our water system. You may recall that we went to the state to request approval to use a design build process for the delivery of this project. That it requires state approval, and we received that. Staff and our consultant that is familiar with design build processes went through an RFQ, an RFP, and an interview process, and we selected T. Bailey RH2 Engineering team as the team to do this project, as the most highly qualified. T. Bailey is the contractor, RH2 is the engineer, and together they will work to design and build this project. In order to get this process started, before us tonight is the standard Design Build Institute of America contract that is a standard template for these types of contracts, and it has been custom fit for this project. Now, the city has also hired an attorney who specializes in design build contracts within Washington State. And that attorney was very instrumental in helping put this contract together to ensure that it meets all state and city design construction requirements. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, any questions or comments from staff, from council?
It's Councilmember Maloney.
Yes, Councilmember Maloney?
Thank you, Mayor Martinez. Thank you, Director Worley, for giving that additional background. Design build projects can be much more difficult to manage than your standard project, and I appreciate hearing that it's well-qualified contractor and well-qualified consultants to help make sure we're getting that right. So excited to see how this goes for us. I think this can be just a fantastic way of building out a project like this. I did read through the whole agreement and saw a number of spots where we can certainly change paths if this just isn't going to work for us. So appreciate all the attention that went into that, and just wanted to express my gratitude to staff for taking a new approach and taking all the due diligence required to make sure this goes well. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Maloney. Would any member of the audience like to comment on this issue? All right, if hearing none, then we'll go ahead and entertain a motion.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve resolution number 4113, authorizing the city manager to execute the Design Build Institute of America Phase 1 agreement with T. Bailey, Inc. for the progressive design build services for the Zone 3 water storage reservoir project.
So there's a motion to approve resolution number 4113. Do I hear a second?
This is Ron, I'll second it.
Seconded by Councilmember Serrano. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. It passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Worley. And I believe you're on the line for one more. We have a bid rejection citywide traffic signal improvements Phase 2 project. You want to update us on that one?
Good evening again, Mr. Mayor and council members, and given the fact that you have probably become tired of listening to me, I am going to turn this over to our CIP manager, Maria Serra.
Mrs. Serra, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. So we are presenting to you our recommendation to reject bids for citywide Phase 2 project. And this is a traffic signal upgrade project. It's the second phase of it. We had Phase 1 completed several years ago. This project is currently funded through a series of grants that are federal and state, and also has local funds to support its construction. Yet, the bids that we received were considerably higher than our engineer's estimate, which we thought was conservative, and also much higher than the funding that we had available. What we noticed when we evaluated the bids was that the items that were consistently higher were the ones related to equipment for signals. So our recommendation is to unfortunately reject bids and then work with our funding agencies to identify if there is an opportunity for revising maybe the scope, identifying some prioritization or some other mechanism to be able to rebid this project and be successful completing at least a portion of it.
All right, thank you. Any questions or comments from council? Yes, Council. Mayor Pro Tem Barajas.
Sorry, I was ready for the resolution.
Oh, I was actually gonna have one question. What would, in your opinion, be as far as in rejecting these bids and prolonging the process, do we still have an adequate system that's gonna provide and function until we get it repaired or fixed?
Yes, at this point, these signals are in place and functioning. They may require more maintenance in the meantime.
Okay. And we're still at that point where we still have time, basically, is what I'm getting at. I just want to ensure that we don't get caught in this issue where they're so corroded or so used up where it might cause an accident or something of that nature where we might become liable. But I understand the reason for the rejection of the bids, and as long as our staff has a comfortable feeling and has given us this report, then I'll go ahead and approve it. I just wanted to get your comments on where you think we were at on this process.
And we don't expect to delay too much putting this project back out. We just want to ensure that we are approaching it in a manner that makes it possible to be built. Right now, the overage is in the order of $2 million.
Thank you. We appreciate that too. All right, with that, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve resolution 4114, rejecting all bids for bid number 17014 for the citywide traffic signal improvements Phase 2 project.
So there's a motion on the floor for resolution number 4114. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it. Councilmember Roach.
Seconded by Councilwoman Roach. So all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, so next we get into unfinished business, and we have an item that's been before us for a while. We have the Daniel Uke Short Plat Sewer Service Requirement Appeal, continued from July 19, 2021 council meeting. Director White, you want to give us a briefing on this one?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council, and this will be very brief, but of course, Council has seen this several times before, the city and the appellant. have continued discussions since July on the requirement for sewer service on their proposed subdivision. We've reached an acceptable provision for future sewer service once it's installed in Road 96, and the appellants have withdrawn their appeal.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Director White. Any questions or comments from council?
Yeah.
Councilmember Alvarado, thank you.
Just a quick comment. This, my perception of this item is that this could have been an easy, just the council to say no and, end it there. But I think as folks came and they made their case, I think the council was more amenable and definitely to have the city work through them. And I just really want to commend staff for working through the details with this. I know this was a long process, but it seems like it had a favorable resolution. So I appreciate staff's time on this.
Thank you, Councilmember Alvarado. Yeah, and I echo the sentiments as well. All right, with that, Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to close the appeal hearing as the appellant has withdrawn the appeal.
So there's a motion to close the appeal hearing as the appellant has withdrawn the appeal. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilmember Alvarado. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, and now for the pinnacle of the meeting. That was a joke. We are now going into new business and to discuss our 2022 ad valorem tax levy and general fund revenue review. Director Richa.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. I'm very excited to be presenting this annual ritual for any cities and counties in Washington State, which is regarding our property taxes, which impacts every resident within the city of Pasco. So a very important topic, as well as an overview of our general fund revenue, which council sees on a monthly basis. However, at the end of the year, especially with our mid-biennium adjustment, we really dive into all of those rates and see if there's any adjustments that we need to make for this year, things that we already know, but also for future years as well. With that, the most important number when we're talking about ad valorem taxes, which is a fancy way of saying property taxes, but Washington State has a requirement where cities and counties, all of the agencies that charge for property taxes, are not allowed to increase their levy more than 1%. It might not feel like that to our residents at times, especially when they see their assessed valuation go up. You immediately think your rates go up with that same level, but it actually does not. It only increases by about 1%. It's not exact for each individual, but as a whole, when you look at the pot, it is 1%. The exception is if there are voted in bonds, like if you if a bond passes for a school district, that is not within this 1% limit. The next limitation is this something called the implicit price deflator. It's very similar to your CPI, how much the cost of goods are going up. Just a little bit of a different calculation. And if this implicit price deflator, I usually just call it IPD, so I'm struggling with that, is less than 1%, then the property taxes also need to increase by just whatever that amount is. So last year it was 0.68 or 0.69, something like that. Unless the cities are able to pass a resolution that shows that there is a great need for a full 1%, and council can do that via a resolution. This year, as everybody has experienced, inflation has been a lot higher than what we have traditionally experienced in the last decade or two. So the IPD is 3.86%, which essentially means that the city is allowed to take its full 1% property tax increase if council chooses to do so. This assessed valuation trend is also not a surprise to most of the community. I wanted to kind of put in a whole picture there since the beginning of this century. We have increased our assessed valuation by 700%. So essentially, our assessed valuation as a community has multiplied 7 times over, and that's a good news. And then, of course, bank capacity, which is always a tricky concept, but essentially it means that you're banking instead of taking the 1%. You're saying we're choosing not to take that this time, but that we will keep or essentially bank our capacity or our ability to do so for future. And council did this in a major way in 2019 when you increased the property taxes by utilizing all of the property taxes that had been banked in the past. And this is a concept where essentially you're leaving the money in the pockets of our residents and then essentially utilizing it only when you use it. So it's a good approach. Right now, the city has about $251,000 in bank capacity, which is essentially quite low for historical purposes, but 2019, we took all of that out and then we banked it, and so it's growing again. This is a very dry set of numbers, and I apologize for that, but we did want to show our math on how we kind of come up with some of our levy rates that we propose to the council. And the most important number that we start with is this number right here, which is our current levy rate. If there were no households or no houses that were built in the city, there was no commercial development, nothing throughout the whole year. The only amount that the city could increase its property taxes by would be the 1%, which is this $114,000. However, we're lucky to be in a very in a growing community, and so you also get to add all of the new construction, which was $207 million worth of value this year, and also some of the state utilities, which we usually estimate at this time. Because our assessed valuation is going up at a much higher rate, but our property taxes cannot increase at that rate, what happens to your levy rate is essentially go down every year. And this is what that looks like. So your levy rate has essentially gone down every year since 2000, with the exception of the 2019 when we took the bank capacity. And then since then, we have come down, and what we have right now is 1.497, which would be the rate if council chose to take the 1% increase that is authorized. But even if we banked that, it's 1.483, which is much lower than the rate right now, which is 1.684. We can kind of talk about the rates, but really I think people, it's easier to think about how much your home, how much you would pay for an average home. And I have not been at the city of Pasco for that long, I would like to think, but it was only 5 years ago, and the number that I used on my first year was $150,000. And it is, it's interesting annual process for me to think about how much an average home at Pasco is and how quickly that amount has grown as well. But as a assessed valuation of $360,000, you're looking at about $600, $534, $539, just a difference of $5 between picking that 1% IPD or choosing to bank it at this time. Always like to compare it to other communities around us. We're just using the 2021 actual data. So if you were a home in Richland, $360,000 home in Richland, you're looking at $877 versus in Kennewick $654, and in City of Pasco $600. It is important to remember for viewers watching at home is that this is city's property taxes only. So it might not feel like it is that cheap, but there are other agencies who also have their own property tax rates. With that, I'm almost over with the property taxes, I would like to go back to this screen and ask council what would be your preference, and maybe ask for discussion on whether you would like to bank the capacity this year or take the 1% as statutorily allowed.
Well, thank you for that, Director Richa. I'll let the council go first. And anybody have any comment?
This is Serrano.
Yes, sir.
Just knowing that we have so much coming in on the horizon, I think there'd be value in banking the capacity for the time being. I mean, we revisit this every year, so, you know, we'll have the opportunity to either expend it if necessary or in 2022, trending towards 23 if we need. But that's my preference.
Thank you, Councilmember Serrano. Anyone else? That would be
Councilmember Maloney.
Yes, Councilmember Maloney.
I agree entirely with Councilmember Serrano.
And I do the same. I see a bunch of heads nodding. So I think we can pretty much move forward with banking in for future.
Okay. Thank you.
So thank you for that, Director Richa.
So our next section would be our general fund overview. And as you can see on that graph, we tried to take out some of the debt proceeds and one-time revenue that we do not want to utilize when we're talking about just the overall revenue growth, just to make sure that doesn't give us a too rosy of a picture at times. But even without that, we are seeing some pretty significant increases in our general fund revenue, which is really good. We have a lot of demands on those revenues as well. We've seen almost about 27% increase since 2017. And property taxes have risen 4 to 5% each year. And that is not, that goes counter to that 1% limit, but you have to think about all of the new construction that has been added that is not included within that limit. So that is why you're seeing your 4 to 5% increase in property taxes. And also very strong economic base that is growing. So we're not a community that goes outside of our community to shop as much anymore. And that's a really good thing because that helps us to provide a lot more amenities to our residents. And that's a really critical piece of information here. We've also relied heavily in the recent times on grants to fill some of our public safety positions as well. And that really helps because, of course, those positions are needed, but we're utilizing outside revenue to at least fund those positions for the first 3-4 years. And that has helped. We've also done quite a bit of revision of costs or rates overall and made sure that they're equitable. Even internal things that council might not see, like cost allocations, which is essentially overhead for general fund, that it charges to other funds as needed. So we've been doing that. I would always like to caveat that less national recession, we're doing really good, and we've got a trend there that is very healthy. Though this area has in the past been pretty much immune to national factors. You never know how the next recession is going to happen. So just something to keep in mind in terms of our fund balances and how we ensure that we are not going to get to a point where we have to reduce our service level with the community. This is something that is in council packet. We have a revenue manual. This is just a screenshot of that. The revenue manual is a really good document that I would ask anyone watching and council as well to go and look. It goes into a deeper detail into how, what types of, what are these revenues and how do we get them? As much detail as we can, and we are working on building it up a little bit more. And taxes are our biggest category. They make up, I believe, about 65% of all general fund tax categories. And overall, we're asking, we're thinking that we're going to be over $6 million than what we had originally budgeted. which is great news. But I would like to kind of explain on why there's such a discrepancy between what we had budgeted versus what we're projecting. And a large part of it is the timing of when we created our 2021-2022 budget. We really didn't know how 2021 was going to factor in terms of the pandemic, the vaccine schedules, just overall what the economic conditions were going to be of the community and the nation. So we were very conservative in our budgeting, both for our revenue and for our expenses as well. So you will see some higher than normal requests come to you or changes come to you this mid-biennium adjustment, just because we did not want to build a budget that was too rosy and then have to pull back, because some of those decisions are really hard to pull back once you've made them. With retail tax is the largest in this category, and then followed by utility taxes, which is the 8.5% that we can charge to the city's utilities, as well as 6.5% for some of the other utilities like telephones, cables, things like that. We're asking for our property taxes just a slight increase. We did build this budget with a 1%, though I will say that it's a minimal amount, so we will just reduce this by 1% when we come to council with the budget amendments. And as we're talking about the property taxes and the city's rates, this is where all of the property taxes go. So the 36 cents of your dollar goes to the school district. 32 cents goes to the state, 17 cents comes to the city. So overall, you'll get a good picture of what are your property taxes funding. And then there's county there with 11%, and some of the others like the Port of Pasco, mosquito control districts, veterans health, really small amount, but they do add up. And sales tax, the major piece of our taxes, we are asking for an adjustment of about $4.2 million. And we'll go a little bit deeper into it, but again, want to kind of show council and the viewers where your sales taxes go. I did my calculations here. When you have a $100 purchase at the city of Pasco, you pay $8.60, and the city gets 29.5 cents of that $8.6. But there are other agencies like transit and city or county, and then the state that receives the remainder of it. We do get public safety and criminal justice tax in full, which is good. But those are a little bit different than your regular sales taxes. And then where do they come from? This is a pretty normal, standard pie chart for you. 53% comes from retail tax. A large part of that is our auto sales as well, that they account for quite a big piece of it. Construction is a big piece, and both of those combined is something that we should and we do keep an eye on, because in a matter of in time of big recessions, people will not buy vehicles or people might not build, and those are things that can kind of go down very quickly. So those are things that we try to protect ourselves from with having good, healthy fund balances. And so this is a trend that you are seeing of your regular and optional sales tax. And as you can see, it's been growing every year. It's been growing consistently at 8% since 2017. And retail and construction have been the biggest drivers for it. Again, we expect it to decline during a recession, but or, you know, with the supply issues for the pandemic, we've been kind of waiting for that to see when that's going to hit our books. It hasn't yet, but the city is also growing and its commercial base is also growing. So we are expecting this trend to continue. And again, retail category, which includes auto sales, RV sales, all of the commercial sales as well. It's been increasing at 12% in the last 2 years. So people, and that is, again, more shopping opportunities within the city of Pasco, but then also city of Pasco residents with more spending power as well. So it's a lot of factors coming together at once. And we do expect it to go up as the Broadmoor commercial zones are also developed in the next couple of years. Construction, you can see 2020 was a banner year. We're not anticipating that level of activity this year just because of the supply chain issues. And usually you'll see an up and down depending on any major construction. Like in the past it used to be schools, but now that we have the warehouses coming in, those things can really impact this category quite a bit. And accommodation and food services, and you can clearly see its impact in 2020. It actually wasn't as low as I thought it was going to be, but still quite a bit of reduction in 2020, but it's coming back at a really good rate. And then utility taxes and fees and charges. These are categories that are internal almost, where general government, which is the largest one there, it's where the city charges overhead rates to other funds. And so the general fund receives revenue from that. So those are some of the increases that we've asked for. Some reductions in the public safety, which is mostly related to COVID again, with our school resource officers who were not reimbursed by the schools because the schools were closed at the time. And then economic environment, which mostly includes our plan check fees. And I would like to iterate that some of those fees we're not allowed to use for general usage. They're only allowed to use for development review type services. Okay. And intergovernmental, the biggest thing to talk about here is the grants, and with that, mostly your ARPA funds that were not anticipated when we budgeted last time, but also some of the grants that we've received to manage the vaccination sites, both at the fairgrounds and then at the CBC site as well. So it includes the testing and the vaccination activities that our fire department has led. And those revenues are included here, though they're fully reimbursable contracts, so there's a cost on the other side of it as well. And I'm going to skip over some of these, just wanted to have that out so that you have a chance to review them. License and permits, the building permit is the biggest one here, and we are anticipating a little bit more revenue in this arena, given we're still issuing quite a bit of building permits at this time. And animal licenses, we've just changed focus at this time. We're not doing some of the things that we used to do, or maybe people have kind of forgotten about it a little bit, so our revenue has gone down slightly. And fine and forfeits as well. It's just a change in focus during the pandemic, that we're just not doing some of these activities. We're doing more impactful things maybe, or maybe people are just driving less and they're not getting as many traffic tickets. And with that, we have really good revenues overall. I'm usually a very conservative person, and but I would say that we have very good economic outlook, and we have good fund balances that we would not have to worry about how we're going to cut the next paycheck. But with the city's operations, we're getting more complex. there's more complex businesses coming in. The expectations of our residents is changing. It's getting higher. And with that, we will need to make more investments to ensure that we meet those expectations. And then overall, the improvements and replacement of city's infrastructure is also a critical piece that will add pressures to the general fund overall. We have a growing city that we need to make investments to make sure it grows. And then we have aging infrastructure that we also need to replace. And so we're kind of, we have pressures on both of those sides. And these are some of the highlights, but I think council has given us a direction on how you would like to see the ordinance for the property taxes next week or the week after. And we will come back to you, and we will also have the mid-biennium adjustment presentation to you in November as well. So with that, I'm open to any questions.
Director Richa, thank you so much. Yeah, it was a good presentation, and I'll council, anybody, any questions or comments for Director Richa?
This is Councilor Maloney.
Yes, Mr. Maloney.
Yeah, thank you, Director Sigdal, for your presentation. So we're going to be having, in addition to this, there'll be further discussions about the actual, the approval of a budget amendment. Or are you expecting all questions based off of this information, or how does it go? How do we go from here?
Yeah, so it is actually a statutory requirement that we go through the general fund revenue while we're doing our property taxes conversation as well. So what we usually do is do the property taxes and the general fund revenue conversation together. However, there's another big piece missing here, which is the expenses side of it. And we bring both the revenues and the expenses adjustments to council. And we are working on that right now, and we will have that to you in the next week or so. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Yeah, if I have some more detailed questions about the changes in the revenue and what we're projecting for updated revenue and expense forecasts for next year, it'd be better to wait for that document, it sounds like, to provide those comments.
Yes, if you have more detailed questions on particulars, we can definitely provide you with more detailed information. At that time, I'm not sure if we would include that in the presentation, unless council would like to see that.
No, I just want to make sure I understood the path forward and when the right opportunities are.
Yeah.
So I'll hold any questions until we move to the next step there. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Maloney. Anyone else? Well, if not, thank you for the report, Director Richa. And I guess I will say that in all the time that I've been here, and under the direction of City Manager Dave Zabel, just one thing that I can appreciate so much is even through the pandemic and through all we've been fortunate that we're growing. And I've always said, if we're not growing, you're dying. Well, we're really living. And so, but one of the things I've always appreciated, even with our last manager and now with Manager Dave Zabel and his staff, is that we've been fiscally responsible. And to be able just to sit here today and say, no, let's bank the 1%. I mean, that's a blessing. That's huge. And I appreciate all the hard work that you put into it and your staff. And it's comforted to know that throughout all the challenges that we've had, and we have some challenging areas in our city and good ones, and this happens to be one that we're proud to say that the council has. I think I can speak for the council when they say that we're proud of where we're at fiscally in our budgets and the way we've handled those in the past. So thank you so much for that, and appreciate all the hard work that's gone into that.
Thank you.
All right. So next, we're going to go to the next item on our agenda, which is miscellaneous discussion. City Manager Dave Zabel, would you like to lead us off with that?
Yeah, a couple items tonight. I wanted to have Director Ratkai kick us off with kind of a fun event they had over the weekend, the trunk or treat. It was attended by hundreds.
Yes, thank you,
Mr. Zabel and members of council. We are, we successfully had the trunk or treat, Halloween trunk or treat at the Giza Stadium parking lot on Saturday, beginning at 10 a.m. According to the recreation staff, we served over 500 cars and probably estimated about 850 children. A couple of vendors even ran out of candy, so it was a great event put on. Trunk or treats seem to be pretty popular around the Tri-Cities this time of year, but it was a great Saturday event and well attended among other items that we had going on, and we were really happy to have it going.
So one other item I would add, and I unfortunately wasn't able to see it, but our rec manager was having to admonish the deputy city manager for moving the line along because he was taking too much time, having too much fun handing out candy. Okay, so second thing, I did want to just give council a quick update on the fire life safety program. That was, the issue of timing was raised a little bit earlier this evening, and obviously work continues on the project, and I think we need to have a little bit of a discussion just to set some expectations. Start off noting that distributing federal monies through ARPA for business loss is far less complicated than distributing federal money for capital improvements to privately owned buildings. So there's some hoops that you have to jump through for that. The city has a program similar to this that we're using as a model right now, the facade program, which similar to what council is proposing here or has authorized here, utilizes federal funds in the form of block grant money to make improvements, facade improvements, to privately owned buildings. So it's not like we're on new ground, but in this regard, the ARPA money for these efforts are going to have similar requirements to the facade program. For instance, the requirement for Davis-Bacon or prevailing wage, requirements for bidding, permission of the building owner, if it's different than the business owner, to even be working on the building, communication of future obligations, making sure that work actually does get done, as well as future obligations with respect to, for instance, a fire suppression system. We want to make sure we communicate what's going to happen. You put a fire suppression system in your building, there's a $1,500 per year cost to having that because annual inspections, and then every 5 years, it's a more robust inspection that's probably more on the order of $3,000. That's done by a third-party person. We've involved, just so council's aware, a third-party fire protection engineer who's going to start working with some of our businesses downtown and other experts to kind of assist business owners and property owners with doing some pre-planning and kind of getting some thought into what they want to see happen with their particular facilities, their particular buildings, so that what they're asking for is actually practical. It's one thing to say you want sprinklers, but will the sprinklers really, get you the juice that you're looking for? And then a mechanism, obviously, to assure performance. So there's a few things to work out. Like I say, it's a little more complex than the business grant piece, which was, as we heard, that was complex enough. We heard folks having concerns about the kind of information they had to provide and so forth, but we got through it, and that was, I think, a very successful program overall in terms of getting some assistance out to folks. So over the next month, we'll be developing the application and the acknowledgements and finalizing the program requirements. Like as I mentioned, our third-party protection professional will work with our property and business owners, and then we'll get into communicating the program and the specific requirements to folks, and then initiating a call for projects. So that we're hoping to accomplish that over the next 4 to 6 weeks and be able to start moving this project along pretty well before the holidays. So that's just a little thumbnail of where we're at and why it's taken a little bit longer than just handing out. Actually, it's easier to hand out checks for business losses. So that's all I had. Any questions? Happy to answer those now or offline.
All right. Thank you for that, City Manager Dave Zabel. Councilmember Alvarado.
Just a quick suggestion. I know a lot of times folks may not necessarily understand all the implications. Might be good to have maybe a one-pager or something that folks can access to say, oh, okay, I need to prevailing wage. What does that mean? things like that, and so that, I think that'd be pretty helpful too.
Yeah, we absolutely want to make sure people understand what the ramifications of the money is, you know, in terms of like the annual fire inspection obligation that you take on forever after that. Or the fact that they need to hire a contractor through a specific bidding process like they do with our facade program, or, you know, those type of requirements that we're going to need to do. The city will be audited by a federal auditor, you know, through a federal audit when we're done with all this, and we need to be able to demonstrate we're in compliance. So, but thank you.
All right, thank you.
This is Councilmember Maloney.
Yes, Councilmember Maloney.
Thank you, Mr. Zabel, for spelling out some of the challenges with working with federal funds, especially when you're talking about, you know, the application we're talking about here. Glad to hear that we're moving as quickly as we can, I guess, at this point. I guess my question is, you know, we obviously administered the funding for, you know, business grants through a third party. Is there any advantages, or is there even an ability for us to do something similar with an expenditure more like this?
I'm looking over at Director White. I don't know if we've talked that through entirely at this point in time. I'd like to get Rick's thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think there's a possibility, Councilmember Maloney. I don't know what that means right now. I guess the big challenge would be to find the right party to be able to contract with for that service. But certainly that's an option that can be looked into.
Yeah, the facade program is much smaller. You know, even when it was active, we were talking one or two projects on the order of $150,000 a year, maybe, or less. And this is a pretty big one, and so I think it's going to take a significant effort. And we're going to have a very qualified third-party administrator to assist us.
Yeah, the reason why I guess I'm bringing that up, or my thought process there, is one, we as council have asked a lot of staff, especially lately, and I don't think we're going to stop. I'll be honest. So so one way is just a matter of assisting, you know, staff with administering some of these things that are very complex and time consuming. Also, we're also looking at the hands-on nature of helping, you know, some of these, you know, small businesses be able to meet the requirements, or to understand how to meet the requirements and what the implications are. There's a lot of energy and time, we know, that goes into those conversations and that facilitation. So in the same you know, theme, it may behoove us as a city to look at, you know, in essence, outsourcing that. Now, there's also, I know there's been trade-offs in terms of loss of control, and something that is, you know, could be, you know, already something that is going to be a challenge to, you know, put the program all together and make sure that the requirements are all being met to the, you know, to the letter of the law. So I know there's some trade-offs back and forth on that. So I'd be interested just to understand what the implications could be, and what opportunities for streamlining or saving could be in place if a third party was doing it instead of the city. You know, could a third party, for example, you know, work with a specific construction contractor, you know, one more global bid, as it were, to be able to implement it across multiple buildings, which could both accelerate it and reduce costs for mobilization for the vendors. I don't know if any of that's going to actually work. I just wanted to put out there that I encourage staff to creatively think of how we can partner with the private sector, similar to how we've done on a variety of other projects of this nature and scale in the past too. See if we can just make this work a little better. So thank you.
I appreciate that. And, you know, we did have some conversation today about city initiating the construction versus the private property owner through a grant. The city initiating it, you know, of course, one of the huge liabilities you take on, well, let's just say the liabilities you take on remodeling a 100-plus-year-old building could be immeasurable when you think about asbestos and structural integrity, current wiring, you know, those kind of things. You could get in there to do a $100,000 sprinkler system and wind up having to spend $500,000 to get out of the building because you run into so many other things and there's so much other mediation. So I think that's those are some things we really need to think about going into this program.
All right. Thank you. There is one more thing that I'd like to bring up, and that is tomorrow is a very, very special day, or important day. Tomorrow is the deadline for the elections to turn in your ballots. It is imperative, and it's more important than I've ever known in my history, in my lifetime, to make sure all your votes are in to get those people you want to elect for your next leaders into the ballots for tomorrow. So please, please, if you have them stacked up in your mail, get them out, fill them out, and take them over to the ballots before. Is it before? Do we know the time? Is it midnight or before?
Before 8.
Before 8 o'clock tomorrow. So I just wanted to make sure we mentioned that. So, is there anything else under miscellaneous items?
This is Councilmember Mullen again, just to amplify that, Mayor Martinez, I believe that we're past the deadline when you need to mail it for it to arrive on time, given that it has to go up to Spokane to be postmarked. So don't mail it, drop it in a ballot box.
Yes, thank you very much for that. So with that, do we have a need for an executive session tonight? City Manager?
Not this evening.
Not this evening. So with that, thank you all for coming. It is 8:01 and this meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.